What's up and welcome back to the channel. The name is Ninja Knight. Make sure you like, share, subscribe and hit the notification bell up above for future uploads and check out the link posted down below. Thank you. So here I have a Harry Potter TV series video that I'm going to do, and it's something that I talked about in my previous video that I would like to do, which is a fan cast of the HBO Max TV series of Harry Potter if they do decide to go with the books. So in this one, I'm going to just focus primarily on some of the prominent characters that appear in Philosopher's Stone. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk about the prominent characters that are at Hogwarts rather than some of the secondary characters that are around in particular. For example, the likes of the Dursleys, for example. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain why I chose each actor, and sometimes there's multiples in each role. And I'm going to go through why I think they would be a good fit for this Harry Potter series and how they could go moving forward. So the first one we have there is Harry, Ron and Hermione, and I think it's no surprise that I'm going to have to go with unknowns for these three characters. We pretty much had unknowns for the original series and movies with Harry, Ron and Hermione, and I think it's going to have to be the same way to decide to go with these characters in this movie. What I do want to see though, for example, is an accurate depiction of these characters, and like I said before, I think Ron is possibly one of the characters that the Weasleys that they're going to try and alter, in my opinion, to try and modernise it in some sort of way. We have seen an alteration towards Hermione within The Cursed Child, and it was something that an awful lot of fans, particularly of the books, were not fans of, and I can completely understand that point. But I do think if anybody's going to be altered within these movies, it's going to be the Weasleys, unfortunately, and I don't think it would be too surprised to see that happening. Like I've said before in previous videos, when you're looking at red-haired characters and the alterations that are being made to those characters, I think it's nearly 25 characters now that have been radically altered from what they originally looked like. I wouldn't be too shocked to see it being the Weasleys, and if they decided to take a modern spin on these movies, particularly in the TV series, I wouldn't be shocked. But anyway, unknowns for these three characters, I think it's really a no-brainer in terms of that, because they are going to have to pull people that are unknown, I think, for this one, and particularly actors that are going to be relatively cheap to start off with, because this series, if it does branch into multiple seasons, the contracts that are going to be up for these actors are going to just continue to rise along with their star, and I suppose there'll be many different type of incentives then for these people to stay on. So first up I have James and Lily Potter, and I wanted to pay homage towards the original movies, and I think that these two actors in particular have been fairly fond in talking about coming back and doing anything Harry Potter related. I know Daniel Radcliffe is hugely interested in doing anything Harry Potter, and I think at this moment these two are probably the right age in terms of how they would look in the books particularly and in the series. Now, I'm very aware that James and Lily Potter were characters that were marked out fairly early into the series and were also then described as being young. I think a factor of what I'm going to talk about within this video is if the production uses a sort of aging and de-aging technique with these various actors, I think it could definitely have longevity in terms of series and spin-offs and stuff like that could branch out from this series, because I think this is a series that is open to a lot of different interpretation in terms of being able to look at characters' backstories. So I think you would want to be starting with someone youthful enough, particularly with the Potters, but also then that has some sort of experience and sort of grandiose sort of nature to them. And I think Daniel Radcliffe would be excellent as James, and I think if you decided to look at some of the exploration between James Potter, for example, in his school days with some of his other contemporaries, I think it would be good to place Daniel Radcliffe within that role. Now, I know when I'm talking about some of the other characters, maybe it might not come off that way, but I think when you're factoring in the ages of various different people and with the techniques that Hollywood have at their beck and call now, I think aging and de-aging actors is going to be fairly easy and straightforward. I think Bonnie Wright would be great as Lily Potter. She was fantastic as Ginny, and I think she's an actress that certainly hasn't seemed to have done an awful lot since the Harry Potter movies. Maybe she's happy to do that, maybe she's happy to stay away from acting. I'm not really sure on that one. But I think if they could get her back to play the role of Lily Potter, it'd certainly be a very good role for her. I think she would look the part. I think she would do very well. And I think the chemistry was there between those two actors within the original series. So it would be nice to see a reunion of sorts between these two. I suppose a spoiler alert for the next video I'm going to do on this. It's going to be no surprise to see who I pick as Lucius Malfoy and also then as Arthur Weasley. So do keep that in mind going forward in these videos. But yeah, I think that these two would be absolutely brilliant to have back. I think it would be a nice homage. I think it would be very similar to the likes of Christopher Reeve popping up in Superman the likes of Linda Carter that has recently popped up in the likes of Wonder Woman, and then the way Michael Keaton is apparently going to be popping up again as Batman in the different sort of cameo role. So I think that these cameos are a nice nod to the original movies that were really a big success, and I think it's a nod then to the actors that were intrinsic to that success. Okay, so this one is a tough one to break down, and this is why I've picked 3 different individuals, because I all think that 3 of them bring a lot of differences to the tables. Now, I think that when you have Richard Harris, when you see the late great Richard Harris, he did an absolutely amazing job as Dumbledore, and then you moved on then to Michael Gambon then for Prisoner of Azkaban. What I noted about those two actors is they are Irish actors. So I know that Jude Law then is now portraying a young Dumbledore, so I think the break in continuity between that character is fairly irritating, considering that when you factor in that the original series had 2 Irish actors playing the character of Dumbledore, it certainly seems like that is the case, that they want Dumbledore to be Irish, and I've absolutely no problem with that. I think as we're going to see as this video progresses, that there are some choices that are non-UK and non-Irish. Now, Ireland and the UK are not the same place, by the way. Northern Ireland is part of the UK. The Republic of Ireland is its own entity, so an awful lot of people do get confused with that one. So do bear that in mind. So going from left to right, I'm going to talk about them, and I'm going to explain why I think they'd be good in the role. Michael Fassbender would be a good choice, and this is something that I'm factoring into this aging and de-aging technique. I mean, you could put prosthesis on him, you could age him up by the colour of his hair, multiple ways of doing that. Why have I picked Michael Fassbender? Well, Michael Fassbender is a very interesting character in that he has played Magneto, who is a very sympathetic villain, and is also someone with a history behind him, and that has to make very difficult choices, which is something that Dumbledore has to do within the books. I think Fassbender is very good at being calm and reserved with this kind of under sort of pressure within his eyes. He very much so emotes with his face very, very well, and particularly with his eyes. And I think that that's something that you have to factor in for Dumbledore, that he is a character that does emote an awful lot with his eyes. And I think that Fassbender in a way would be quite similar, I suppose, to Gambon in that he can bring out this ferocity in him as well too. And I think that that is something that might be needed within the series, because I think if you were going to look at beforehand, before Harry is born, for example, and you're going to look at some of the older stories, particularly with a young Tom Riddle, I think it would make sense to have an actor that does look young, and then you're able to age him up later on in the role. So I think that that would be a great idea for Dumbledore. Moving on then to Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson's another actor that I think would be fantastic in pertaining to Dumbledore. Here he is in Jedi robes. He looks the part. He looks like he's essentially a space wizard. So it would be not too much of a leap for him to go then to be in Harry Potter. He's an actor that didn't appear in the Harry Potter movies. I'm sure that he was someone that they probably were sought after for a long time and just never came to getting on board. He's an actor I think that would fit in very well, because he has said recently that he would like to step away from action-oriented movies, and he would like to get back into more sort of dramatic type of movies and those sort of things. I think a series would benefit him greatly. I think he's an actor that has a very, very big range in terms of talent. He would provide that caring figure for Dumbledore, I think, which is another factor which I like about him. And again, he does have a very serious presence when he's on screen, and I think he would be someone that you would look at, and particularly with his own history personally, I think he would give off a very good persona as being the headmaster of such a school. And I think he would also then as well too, in my opinion, give off a very sort of ancient kind of feel to him, and it would be something that you would say, right, he's not someone to be messed with. And I mean, when you look at the likes of the Taken movies and the fact that he's been in Star Wars, I think it is very important, and it's a good resume that he has behind him. So Liam Neeson would be a solid choice, I think, for Dumbledore. And again, another actor that you could age and de-age very easily, because his own appearance now, he looks his age actually, and then you could actually then go back and say, right, we'll de-age him then to some of the younger scenes if you wanted to do that. The last one is Liam Cunningham, and I've gone for an Irish hat trick here now on this one, and I think, like I said, Dumbledore would definitely be, for me, an Irish character within this series. It's something that I would like to see personally. And I think when you're looking at Liam Cunningham also being from Dublin, I think he would be an excellent Dumbledore. And I'm going to say this, and I mean no offence towards Liam Cunningham, but I think you would only be able to do older scenes in particular with Liam Cunningham. I think de-aging him would be a bit more of an ask. And I think though with Liam Cunningham, I think you would get more of a Richard Harris type of performance out of him, where as he was in Game of Thrones when he saw Davos, I think he would give a very regal performance. His eyes told the story. He was very serious. He was very much so respected within his own contingent. And I think that is what you would get as a headmaster, particularly from Hogwarts in this Liam Cunningham. So I think that he has a good body of work as well too behind him. He's played some characters with dubious past. He has played some dubious characters. He has played some very honourable characters. And I think that is something that could be used to the advantage of Dumbledore within this series. There's many different avenues they could go down with this character that are explored and unexplored. And I think that these three individuals here would make a very good case for being Dumbledore. And I think any one of these three would be something that I would be very much interested in and I would support wholeheartedly. Next up is Professor McGonagall, and I've gone with Karen Gillan. Now, we realise that she's much younger than we had from our original Professor McGonagall, but I think, again, like I'm going to say, when you're factoring in the ageing and de-aging of some of the actors, I think McGonagall would be a good one to have. She is an incredibly powerful individual, and I think, if anything, Karen has really showcased that within her role in Doctor Who. She's also showed that within Jumanji, and most recently, she's shown that really well then as well too as Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy and the subsequent Avengers Endgame. I think, again, this is a character, by the way, Professor McGonagall, that is Scottish. Karen is Scottish, so I'm also trying to factor in a lot of the accents of these actors, and I'm trying to use actors that are from certain places so that they will fit in with the original character, and then some other actors I'm going to use that might not be from those original places that I do think then would be able to get a dialect coach in and then really nail on those accents. But I think Karen would be a fantastic choice as Professor McGonagall. She's someone that is powerful. She is someone that is a character that needs to have someone that's going to be behind it in terms of the way she looks and the way she acts. And I think it's a very hard performance to fall over and under when you look at the previous Professor McGonagall. But I think Karen would absolutely be top of the range there for that one, I think. Next up is Professor Quirrell, and that's going to be Toby Cabell for me. And I think Toby Cabell is a very underrated actor personally. He has unfortunately been involved in some things that haven't quite gone his way, and he's been involved in other things that have gone very well. So he's been involved in Black Mirror, which I really liked. I thought he was very, very good in that. He was involved in Kong Skull Island, and I think he was absolutely brilliant in that as well too. And unfortunately for him, he was cast as Dr. Doom in a very flat Fantastic Four. And his career just seems to be kind of in those moments where he's in good movies and then he's in some really bad ones. He was in Bloodshot there recently as well too, and I don't think that one did him any favours. You look back though and you see what he did with Rock and Roller as Johnny Quid. Absolutely outstanding, and that's something that I think that he could play into with Professor Quirrell. And I would say to anybody that hasn't seen Rock and Roller, go and check it out. There's some fantastic actors in there, and Toby is one of them, and I think he really portrays a very strong character within that, and I think it's something he could bring forward, particularly with the acting range that he brings in this. Professor Quirrell is one of those characters that has this persona that he is putting on for the Hogwarts school, particularly the staff and also then the students, and we all know why then if you've read the books and also have seen the previous movies. I think Toby could definitely showcase a snivelling, quivering little man, and then also underneath it then be this sort of pseudo Dark Lord, and I think he would be really good in that. And I also think it would be somewhat of a redemption arc in terms of people really taking him credibly yet again. He's an actor that I'm a big fan of, and I think he would be absolutely stellar as this character. Next up is Hagrid, and I'm going with Greg Davies. Now, this is a very difficult act to follow. When you look at Robbie Coltrane, I mean, Robbie Coltrane is a very difficult individual to replace as Hagrid. The Giants were a big lovable heart that had some kind of dark little bit of a past to him, but also then has just this enormous heart and this enormous care for the three children and the school and for Dumbledore himself. And I think Greg Davies would be someone that would step out to me. Greg Davies himself is an absolute giant of a man. So if you decided to use sort of forced perspective or either green screen, I think you could use that very well with Greg Davies because he's already so large and tall as a man. He has a background in being a comedian, which I think would help out with some of the lines that Hagrid makes. And he also then has a very specific accent, which I think would really drive into the Hagrid persona because it's something that Robbie Coltrane had as Hagrid, and it's something that really would stick with you. There's also a side to him as well too that you could look at and you could take very seriously, particularly because Hagrid is someone that does hold Albus Dumbledore very near and dear, and he also holds Harry very near and dear. When you look at him, he was the headmaster in the In-Betweeners, an absolute scallywag, an absolute villain within that series. But I think when you look at him being able to have that range and then that comedic ability, I couldn't see a better individual that could play Hagrid. And I have to say, out of everybody that I've decided to look at and say who I think would be a difficult choice to pick, it's Hagrid. Hagrid has to be the most difficult character to cast within this Harry Potter TV series, because I can't feel that you can just cast anybody as this. I think you need someone with a pedigree, and I think Greg Davies is absolutely it. Next up is Severus Snape, and I've gone with Adam Driver. Now, I know people that are looking at this video now are saying to themselves, oh no, it's that guy from Star Wars. Hear me out on this one though. This guy is a very talented actor, and this is a casting decision that has been suggested to me by a significant other, and I think it really works. I have to say, Adam Driver does look the part of Severus Snape, and it's a very difficult role to follow up on from Alan Rickman. I think when you look at this actor particularly, and he has done some very serious movies, he's done some excellent work, the likes of Logan Lucky. He has been in the Marriage movie that wasn't out too long ago, did very well on that. But I think out of the Star Wars sequel trilogy that I personally didn't like myself, he was the one shining star. And I think when you are the shining star within a bad movie, and essentially 3 bad movies, I think that says something about your ability. And I think Severus Snape is probably another character within this series that has to be a character that has to be cast correctly. And he has to be cast with a view to, this guy is very much so an anti-hero, and we don't really know his story. Can we feel sympathetic for him? And I think a lot of people, particularly when they looked at that Star Wars sequel trilogy, as bad as it was, were certainly sympathetic towards Kylo Ren. And I think that he could bring an awful lot of attributes from that role into this one as Severus Snape. I think you could follow Alan Rickman very, very well, and I know an awful lot of people will probably suggest, Benedict Cumberbatch would be a great Severus Snape. I would disagree. I mean, there's a lot about Adam's physical appearance that would certainly ring into Snape. I mean, look, for example, the long black hair, he has a large nose. Obviously, I'm just making a visual kind of guide on that one there. And then he has a very particular way of speaking as well, and I think that is something that would factor in. I think you hire a dialect coach for him. He's a very serious actor. He takes his craft really seriously, and I haven't just made this choice on a whim. This isn't a choice that's just made just thinking he'll do because he looks the part. This is a man that's very, very particular about his craft, and he takes what he does incredibly serious. That's something that I want to see from an individual that's playing Severus Snape. This is one of the most important characters too within this story, aside from Hagrid and Dumbledore, I suppose, and obviously Harry himself. I think Severus is someone that you need to have a really good handle on. And I think, again, like I said, if you wanted to look at spin-off series, as for example, Severus Snape would be one to follow. Or if you want to do a prequel series, or if you want to do extended sort of shooting around Severus Snape in this series, I think he's the way to go. He's young enough. You can also age him, de-age him, whichever way you like. There's a good longevity in this actor. And I think that is the way I would be looking at that one. I would certainly think of the long-term game with this one. Because unfortunately we haven't got the wonderful Alan Rickman with us anymore, I think Adam Driver is the man to take on that role. I think, like I said, looks the part, very serious actor, very good pedigree behind him, and a shining star in what was a bad trilogy. I think that is a very good pedigree to have, and very, very much so I would go with Adam Driver on that one. Next up, I'm going to have Voldemort, and this is a tough choice. I'm very in between in how I want to think about this one. Andy Serkis is a choice, and the reason why I'm saying this is because he's worked with Toby Cabell before in Planet of the Apes. Andy Serkis was Caesar. He has been Gollum, also called Smeagol, and then he has also played Ulysses Claw and Supreme Leader Snoke within the Star Wars movies. A very versatile actor. He's also played King Kong as well. And I think if you're going to go with a villain role, particularly that's going to possibly need some green screen or some sort of CGI maybe, because whilst you have Ray Fiennes, and I would call him Ralph Fiennes, but he likes to be called Ray. When you have such a performance that comes from Ray Fiennes as Voldemort, I think it's something that you need to look at now, particularly within this series, that you need to have someone that's going to be just a notch above again. Ray Fiennes did an exemplary job, and I think something that was missing from Voldemort within those movies was the backstory from Voldemort. I mean, what made Voldemort Voldemort? And I think that this is something that might require either aging, de-aging, multiple actors maybe perhaps for this one. But I think if you're going to look at someone that's particularly going to come back in Goblet of Fire and maybe have some sort of presence within the Philosopher's Stone season, it has to be someone that you're going to nail on for seasons that are after that. I always felt that when I looked at particularly Philosopher's Stone and I think Ray Fiennes' performance then within Goblet of Fire, I think when you look at the two of those, it seemingly seems like the Philosopher's Stone performance influenced the performance then within Goblet of Fire. And I think that's why I want to say that I want to have someone from the get-go. I want to have a very, very unique perspective on the character from the get-go, and I don't want the actor to feel like that they have to follow basically what somebody else does and what somebody else did when they might not be as good an actor as them. And I think that that is something that could gravely affect the series if they don't cast Voldemort straight away. I think it's something that's really important. Andy Serkis, like I said, has experience with green screen. He has experience with CGI characters. Obviously, we know Professor Quirrell at the start. I think a dynamic between Andy Serkis and Toby Cabell could be quite good because they have worked together before on Planet of the Apes, and I think that those two men understand each other. I think the conversations between those two men would be fantastic to watch in these movies. But again, I'm very appreciative of the fact that Andy Serkis is the age he is now, and it would be difficult then if you wanted to go and rewind then and have him looking younger. But like I said, de-aging techniques, Warner Brothers have the money, put it into it. I mean, that's someone that I wouldn't overlook, and he has been some of the most ultimate villains around for the last couple of years. Severely underutilized, though, in my opinion, in Star Wars, underutilized within the Marvel universe. Why not put him into Harry Potter and make him as utilized as possible and really make a statement then with him? Moving on then, I'm looking at Christian Bale, and I mean, that comes as no surprise, I don't think, to anybody. Christian is a very powerful actor. He's another actor similarly, and that's why I'm picking him as well too, because he's a very similar actor insofar as Adam Driver, that he takes his craft extremely seriously. We've all seen the outburst and heard the outburst that occurred on the Terminator set from Christian Bale. He's a very good Bruce Wayne, a very good Batman, which is something that people will always remember. And I think he's going to star in Thor Love and Thunder as a villain there, Gord the God Butcher, as far as I know. Why not give him a crack at another one? And I think the way Marvel certainly treat their villains over the last couple of years, there's only been one or two that have really stuck it out in terms of the memory. I think Christian Bale, maybe being a British actor himself, probably would have liked to be involved with Harry Potter, and I think that there's no better role for him to be involved in than Voldemort. I mean, imagine the range that this guy could go through as Voldemort, and this is why I'm saying you cast him early, you get him involved early, and then you see the process down from Christian Bale, because like I said, he's someone that takes it very seriously. He has a pedigree behind him. He's been in American Psycho. He knows what it is to be a villain. He has been in The Mechanic. He has been in multiple different projects where he's able to just basically just turn himself into someone else, and I think he would take this project incredibly seriously, and I think he would be very, very strong as Voldemort. And I dare say he would be as good as, if not better than, Ray Fiennes. But I think this is going to have to rely on the budget then. I know some of these actors are going to be high profile actors that might cost some money. Christian Bale is definitely going to cost money, and that's why I'm looking to the next man here now on the far right. And I've gone Irish yet again, and I know people are saying, oh, that's nepotism and you're looking after Irish people. But again, I'm just following what JK said in terms of going with predominantly Irish and British actors. Now, I do know that we have one or two in here, and particularly, again, like I said, Adam Driver not being Irish or British, and particularly being American, that you're saying, oh, well, you're thinking about that. But I think when you're looking at Tom Vaughan Lawler is, and I would very much so suggest anybody that's watching this video to go and look at it. There's a fantastic Irish TV series, crime drama called Love Hate. That's love /hate, about Irish gangsters here in Ireland. Now, it's a series that is kind of based on what would happen here sometimes, and I suppose then they try to dramatise what happens the odd time here in Ireland, and particularly its ground, I suppose. But when you look at Tom Vaughan Lawler, he is someone that has had a very good pedigree behind him as well, and he most recently has appeared in Avengers Infinity War as Ebony Maw, and I think it was great for him, after watching him in Love Hate and how good he was in that, to then look at him then in Avengers Infinity War, and for a lot of people then to be absolutely loving him as Ebony Maw. And again, I was a little bit disappointed when in Endgame they kind of shortchanged him and he wasn't in it as enough as I think he was. Another factor for Tom Vaughan Lawlor is that he's able to do an Irish accent, particularly a Dublin accent as we would call it, your average kind of what's the story bud type of accent, and I think he would be very strong if he decided to even use his normal speaking voice. His normal speaking voice is quite close to what Ebony Maw is, and again, he's an actor now that's very much so adept in prosthesis work with Ebony Maw and also with CGI work with Ebony Maw. So that's where it'll be coming out from Tom Vaughan Lawlor. He has a voice that resonates. He has a look, as you can see here within this picture, that certainly resonates. And I mean, he's a very nice individual when you look at him and see him in interviews. And then this character that he plays in Love Hate is called Nidge, and he just turns on a dime piece. He's just amazing. And I think that is the sort of thing that you want to see with Voldemort. You want to see a vulnerability maybe to this character, and you also then want to feel pity. I mean, what he does in Love Hate as Nidge are reprehensible things, horrible things, awful things, and he's still a likeable individual. And I think that that's something that I always picked on, particularly with Ralph Fiennes' performance. Voldemort never came across as anything but just a mustache twirling villain to me sometimes. And I think when you bring in an actor of the caliber of Tom Vaughan Lawlor or Christian Bale or Andy Serkis, I'm obviously going to go more for Tom Vaughan Lawlor. I think you bring in this actor then that has this vulnerability to them, and I think again it would rise then, particularly as the seasons progress with the likes of the Horcruxes being destroyed, that you look at Tom Vaughan Lawlor and you see this kind of feral kind of fear coming out of him, because this is what he did as Nidge, and I think he has a very good precedent for it beforehand. A very strong actor in my opinion, and the body of work is there for him, and I think again he might be someone that you might cast as, I suppose, a relative unknown for the majority of the world, and then I think he would deal a performance that is absolutely mind-blowing. That's one reason why I'd pick Tom Vaughan Lawlor, because with Andy Serkis and with Christian Bale, you probably know what you're going to expect, and you're probably going to expect to get this or you're going to expect that. I think Tom Vaughan Lawlor is probably a wild card, and I think a lot of people then wouldn't know what to expect with this guy, and he'd be extremely unpredictable. And I think as well that he would be able to interpret the character in a myriad of ways, and I think it's something that he did within the Avengers world as Ebony Maw. He was able to interpret this character, this very intellectual, cerebral character, and it came off very well. I mean, the banter he had with Tony Stark, particularly Robert Downey Jr., was really good. He also had banter as well too with Doctor Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, and Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man. And I think he stood his own against actors now that are really being talked about. He'd be my choice. I think he'd personally be my first choice as Voldemort, and I think I would look at the other two then maybe as backups then if that was going to be the case. But that's where I'm going with the Harry Potter TV series. I think that there are a number of characters that you could cast, and I'm going to cast them in future videos. I'm going to try and talk about them in specifics, particularly the likes of Gilderoy Lockhart. I'm going to talk about Remus Lupin. I'm going to talk about Sirius Black, and I'm going to talk about Bellatrix Lestrange. And I think there's a couple of other actors in there, and particularly other characters that I want to talk about within those videos. What I'd also like you to do is drop in the comments below of who you would like to see me cast. Which sort of characters, have I missed anybody that you think that might be really important, that you would absolutely love to see on screen within this series? Even just name the character and I will go look at the character again, and I will deep dive and I'll have a think about who I would like to see as that character. I think when you're looking at an awful lot of the child actors particularly, I think they're going to be relatively unknowns personally. So I think if you're thinking about the child actors in terms of that, I think they're going to be majority unknowns. I couldn't see anybody being cast as one of the child actors that are going to be someone that's really famous around the world. So if I was going to say anything, it would be try to keep it to the Hogwarts staff. Maybe try to keep it with the likes of the Death Eaters. Maybe try to keep it with the likes of the Ministry. And this is something that is incredibly difficult to do. It's incredibly difficult to do, to look at certain characters particularly that are coming from Ireland and Britain without having to look outside of that. Because these are characters that have been played by some top tier talent within these movies, and it's very difficult then to look at these in terms of what they would do in a TV series, who would give us good longevity, and also then who's going to bring a caliber to this role that has been brought beforehand. I mean, Sirius Black is a very difficult one to cast because he's been played by Gary Oldman. I mean, Gary Oldman's an incredible actor. But I have a couple of people in mind. I also have a couple of people in mind for Remus Lupin. I have a couple of people in mind for Madame Trelawney. So characters like that are going to be important moving forward within the series. I have all in mind. So try to think about somebody, maybe drop them in the comments below, let me know who you think. Make sure you like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, check out the link below. Hope you like this video, and I'll talk to you later. Good luck.